Welcome to We Stay Woke.
This is Kristine, a.k.a. K Bout It.
This is Dave, and
we stay woke.
What's up, y'all? We hanging out in St. Louis, Missouri, back again. We chilling down here at Cori Bush's campaign office.
Big time.
What's up? What's popping down here?
I mean, well, I'm excited because this is my first time coming to this office, and been putting in a lot of work in these streets. Today, got my melanin popping, walking the streets of University City, knocking on doors, gaining support, planting yard signs, and really just getting people excited about Cori Bush.
Word. High five. All right, so we hanging out here with, we have two guests, Patric Taylor, board member of the Brand New Congress, and Isra Allison, executive director of the Brand New Congress. Woo woo. Hey. So welcome. We're going to get some introductions and bios later on. But why don't we jump into the news, and Patric and Isra, why don't you join us? We just talking about the news. We also got my homie who's sitting over there in the corner.
Okay, so in the news right now, Trump just had a summit with Russian President Vladimir Putin. And it seems right now that both lawmakers on both sides of the aisle are really uneasy because Trump basically said that he didn't believe that Putin interfered with the election. Putin said he didn't do it. Trump believed him. And so lawmakers, even Republicans, like Fox News is seriously losing their mind over this right now. They're seriously on Fox like all he had to do was go on there and side with the intelligence community and tell Putin to his face that what he did was wrong. And he couldn't even get that right.
I mean, question. I feel like Trump is... Does Russia have something over Trump? Why is he kowtowing to the Russians?
Other than they helped him win the election and the golden shower rumor, I don't know.
All right, I don't know. We should get into that. I mean, that sounds hella... is that conspiratorial?
I mean, I think it might be facts, but we'll leave it in the conspiracy theory pile. But even with that being said and him siding with Putin, there's mounting evidence of Russian nationals infiltrating U.S. political organizations, one being the NRA. I think her name was Maria Butina.
Oh, yeah. She just got arrested, right?
She did. But she's not connected to the Mueller probe. That's separate.
All right. Patric, Isra, what's up?
Well, not only are lawmakers uneasy, I'm uneasy because of this constant distraction in the news cycle. And I'm not saying I'm on a news fast, but I'm sick of it over and over again. This all we want to talk about is Trump and Russia, Trump and Russia. You know, I'm in a position where there are local issues to be concerned about. There's our political system to be concerned about. This is a primary year. This is midterms. And once again, we get pushed back into the shadows because of what's going on with the president and, And
that's a really good point you made, because I was thinking about that today, that of this being a distraction and it being a midterm cycle, and just thinking that, isn't this perfect that it's distracting away from so many other issues? I mean, not that this isn't an issue. Mm-hmm. He's basically committing treason, but he's been committing treason. What's next, right?
Exactly. And so we need to figure out the real checks and balances. And, so far, the whole argument to impeach Trump, and is that possible with, the evidence that's clearly in our face every day?
Because Trump can pardon himself. What the hell is that? Who the hell pardons themselves?
That's what he said. I don't know that. That's what he said, and I think, Rudy Giuliani maybe tried to back that up, but I think that other legal experts were try it if you want to,
I think this is a big reason as to why a lot of people didn't like really don't like his Supreme Court pick. I think he's on, the record of supporting the president not being able to be indicted or held to really any legal standard. Almost, it seems like.
What's so ridiculous about that is that his pick actually helped to impeach Bill Clinton. So, like, now that you've seen it, like, oh, I realized it was bad, and that presidential power does supersede, and that impeachment shouldn't have. Like, how crazy is that?
Right. And speaking of hypocrisy, basically Africa wins the World Cup for France, right? So France has this, long history of being racist. Last year there was an election between Macron and Le Pen is known for being a white nationalist and being very openly racist. And then France wins the World Cup, and you have Kylian Mbappe. Excuse me if I pronounced that wrong, but France is struggling with xenophobia and racism. However, you have these people whose parents were obvious immigrants, and they're fine to play soccer for you. Yeah, it kind of goes back to higher learning, and when he was like run nigga run, right? You can come here to our universities, you can play our sports, you can entertain us, but when it comes down to it, when we get mad at you or if you don't kick the goals right, then you could go back to Africa.
Well, I mean, I'm just actually super happy that Russia didn't win. And it's not because of what Russia's doing in the news. It's like because of doping, but it's also because they appointed like this Russian guy to actually look into Russian racism under football. And the guy basically said there's no racism. They're just having fun. It's like just kind of part of the game. Now, if you throw in a banana at like other soccer players, don't tell me that's not racist.
Right. Mm-hmm. And Russia has no people of color on their soccer team either. And it's not like Russia is a monolith. Let's be honest.
Sure enough.
One of my mentors, his name's Dr. Hall, he was sharing me this article about, it was in BBC, talking about basically Emmanuel, Macron, and his comments about just, how Nigeria, the youth, are kind of free from the effects of colonialism. And just the backlash, that he got for that. And it was a tweet he talked, 60% of the Nigerian population is under 25, and he said that 60% of the population, which like me did not witness colonization, we are the new generation. We're going to dispel the prejudice by rebuilding a new future through culture. And in some ways, I guess I can respect his focus, towards the future, but at the same time,
you mean his?
But at the same time, he's definitely, ignoring, a past that is still very present and is still very, alive, in not just Nigeria, but in several, francophone countries. So, and this is at the end of the day is what we're doing right now, having conversation and reminding those that are in power, this way, speaking truth to power, because the stuff they're not going to talk about it because in a lot of ways they're uncomfortable about it. This is exactly what America's going through right now with, just its refusal to have reconciliation about what is done to black folks here in America. Yeah. It's the same song, third verse. It's the same thing over there in Europe and how they want to ignore what, how Belgium would love to act like it didn't do anything in the Congo or just act like it didn't exist or forget about it. Same thing for, South Africa to Egypt. It's all across.
It's worldwide. I mean, to think that colonialism just ended, right? Mm-hmm. Or that the effects of colonialism can end. We are a sum total of our parts, our makeup, traumas, and our DNA. And so it doesn't just end. It's something that stays with us. And it's really short-sighted for people to have those beliefs and thoughts.
I mean, and I think
also destructive.
Exactly. But speaking of this connects to me to the peace talks in Eritrea and Ethiopia. And for folks who don't know, they've been having a long-standing border war between Eritrea and Ethiopia, primarily because Ethiopia handed Eritrea over when the Italians basically colonized, and this was after the establishment of, what's the name of the organization? It's like the precursor to the United Nations, the League of Nations.
League of Nations, yeah.
The League of Nations, like, basically said, you know, like, this was illegal, like, you can't actually do this. And not only that, Italy used chemical weapons that were banned after World War I on Ethiopia. So, you know, this stuff is still going on. Like, it's that lingering history. You know, Eritrea still blames Ethiopia for handing them over. Because, like, the whole situation was, you know, if we hand this country over, then we're not going to invade you, which they did anyway. And this is a crazy thing. This is a part of history that, like, is completely silenced. Like, they actually tried to make a movie about this, and Italy bought the rights to the movie and shelved it.
Wow. I mean, that's part and parcel to a lot of things that are going on or have gone on in Africa. We're not really taught about it, especially historically. But just on some of the peace talks and just what's going on is direct telephone lines have been restored between the two countries, and they're saying that there's no longer a border. So I think this is really big, and considering that Ethiopia and Eritrea were the same country at one point, you know, it's nice to see the continent getting back together, those two countries reconciling. Well, reconciliation is basically what we're all after.
Can barely tell the difference between their people, just like you can barely tell the difference between, you know, a lot of Jews and Arabs.
Truly, and we have a nice Ethiopian Eritrean population here in St. Louis, and they're always very excited if you know that, or if you ask if they're Eritrean versus Ethiopian, because most people have never even heard of Eritrea. So also in the news, just something local since we're here in St. Louis, police in Clayton, Missouri, which is a suburb right outside of the city of St. Louis, 10 teens were eating at IHOP. They must have left IHOP. Someone from management reported that people had dined and dashed, and they said that it was about half a dozen police cars from Clayton that followed the teens, kind of detained them, made them go back to the restaurant.
Even though they showed their receipts.
Yeah, some of the students still had their receipts and were like, we paid, but they made them go back to the restaurant. I will say that IHOP management, or IHOB, or whatever it is, they did vouch for the teens, so they weren't part of anything escalating further. But just, I'm not surprised about Clayton police. We've had many a run-in with them in Ferguson. Clayton is where the Injustice Center is.
Word.
So it might have been just like some folks that were eating at the restaurant that just, you know, they probably made the call to the police, they saying.
Right, and so and also they were incoming freshmen to a really prestigious school here in St. Louis called Washington University. So most people that go to Washington University probably come from, you know, good families that probably have some, you know, middle class. So, you know, and then this is how they're welcome to St. Louis. We all know that St. Louis is racist. We all know that Ferguson happened here, and more. And this is just part and parcel to what individuals, not just in St. Louis, because we know that Ferguson is everywhere, but what happens to young black youth. You know, there was the gentleman that was shot in Chicago recently, so this is something that's, you know, happening all across the nation, and I can't imagine what was going through their heads.
I remember one of y'all were talking about a couple of seconds ago about just like the pain that's kind of carried over through DNA. I remember reading something a while ago. I can't remember it exactly, but it basically was talking about that there was research around that there's serious truth behind.
Dr. Joyce DeGruy.
But I know that there was an article written by, I want to say it was New York Times. It was some East Coast, but it was maybe 2014, 2015, shortly after Ferguson. And the title of the article was The Ferguson Effect. So that's an article. I'll try to see if I can find it and post the link. But the article was called The Ferguson Effect, and it talked about how DNA is transferred traumatically, right? And so and probably the sins of our ancestors even. So don't even think about it just as if you were traumatized, but if you were someone who inflicted trauma, trauma, then that too carries on. It's in your DNA. We have a saying at my house about white people, which is no matter how great that white person, no matter how much of an ally they are, there's always that 5%, right? It's in their DNA, right? And that's when we talk about, white people have to deal with their own racism